Hello, my name is Danny Greaves, and this video is life coaching versus counselling. When you finally reach the stage where you're aware of a problem, the pain is getting to the point where you really want to take action. At that point, it can be a little bit daunting or a little bit overwhelming because there are just so many different options out there. And often people are wondering what's best for me. Two of the main options are life coaching and counselling, and it can be quite difficult to get a really objective, balanced view on what are the advantages and disadvantages of each. So in this video, we're going to take each one at a time, but we're really going to look at the pros and the cons of each so that you can make an informed decision. We're going to start first with life coaching. Now, one of the primary benefits of life coaching is that it really focuses on helping you change the way you think, changing the way that you feel, and changing the way that you act. So it involves a bottom-up approach, which is really getting you to take actions to do things, and a top-down approach where it helps you to change the way that you think. So together, this creates an all-round and holistic benefit. Another advantage of life coaching is when it comes to past experiences or traumas or difficult events. So life coaching helps you to move past those and to help you resolve those issues without having to go deep into the story, without having to verbalize certain parts of your experience, and without having to share some of the really painful or difficult details. So it helps you to clear the emotion and to help you to get over the event, but it means you don't have to spend that time and really go into sharing those details, because for a lot of people that can be really, really difficult. Another advantage of life coaching is the element of accountability. Now, we all have goals, we all have plans, but very often they can actually start to go astray and they just fade away. Life coaching is all about helping you to be accountable for what you say you're going to do, and that increased accountability makes you become more productive, it makes you become more effective and more efficient, and that helps you to move towards your goals. So accountability is a huge part of life coaching. One of the biggest differences between life coaching and counselling is life coaching has an emphasis on results. So it's all about helping you to get a specific result. So rather than saying, okay, let's come in each week, we'll talk things through, and then we'll just see where we go on an ongoing basis, life coaching is more about we have a set period of time, these are your goals, this is what you want to achieve, let's help you get there. So for a lot of people, life coaching is preferred because it really helps to clarify and focus on what that goal is. Life coaching is also considered to be more proactive. And what I mean by this is rather than being more of a sitting back, reflecting process where you're often looking backwards and then reflecting on things, life coaching helps you to look forward and helps you to take steps to get things moving in the right direction. So although there are elements of reflection, absolutely, there is much more of a proactive element to help you get to do things. So you have tools and things to practice so you can actually make a difference as you go forwards. The final advantage or benefit of life coaching is that often it has specific steps. So when you speak to your coach or the person you're working with, often there is a methodology behind it that helps you go from person A in problem state to person B in desired end state. And having that methodology, having that step-by-step guidance often means that you keep on track, you know exactly where you're going, and that often leads to greater results. Now we're going to look at the disadvantages of life coaching, because everything has two sides and it's important for you to know if life coaching is really what you're looking for. Now, probably the biggest obstacle that comes up when it comes to life coaching is there's often a larger fee or a larger investment at the beginning. So this is mainly based on that idea that you're working towards a result rather than just seeing how things go. But the disadvantage of that is that often it requires a larger financial commitment to help you say, right, I'm really in and going for it. And that can be quite tricky for some people. Often there are payment plans and things to get around it, but I would say definitely on average there is a bigger upfront investment which can be off-putting and difficult for some. Another quite big problem when it comes to life coaching is the choice. There are so many life coaches out there, and everyone has done different training or they've done different approaches, which means it can be a little bit difficult to find out what you're getting. So, life coaching isn't as rigorously verified in terms of certification compared to counselling. So, it really does take a little bit more due diligence to have a look at the life coach you're considering, have a look at their backstory, have a look at what they've done, have a look at their philosophy to really find out if that's going to be a good approach for you. The difficulty of having so much choice is sometimes it can just be a little bit rabbit in the headlights, and because there's so much choice and you don't really know what you're looking for, it can lead to a bit of a paralysis analysis. So that's definitely a downside of life coaching. If we keep going, and a little bit linked to that, another drawback of life coaches is that they often really look similar. So lots of people have a fairly nice or at least a decent website, and a lot of people talk about the intangibles, so freedom, so leadership, confidence. And because there's so much choice, and because they look quite similar in many different ways, that again can be quite a challenge to know the quality of the coach that you're getting. This often requires a discovery call where you actually have a chat with the coach to really find out more information, because without that, it can be too unpredictable to find out the quality of the coach that you're going to be getting. So when it comes to trying to work around that disadvantage, I would make sure that you have a discovery call with anyone you're working with so that you can really check that that's something that's important. When we think about other disadvantages of life coaching, often it involves more work. Because it's more results focused and because it involves more accountability, often there's more things that are involved for you to do. So that might be exercises outside of the sessions, it might be journaling to reflect on what's happening, but often there is a bigger work element for you because the long-term goal is that you're empowered to be able to do this all automatically. So it does require an increase in work rate, particularly during the sessions at the beginning, and that can be difficult for some people. The final disadvantage that we're going to talk about when it comes to life coaching is that in its own way, sometimes it can be more challenging, and sometimes people just aren't quite ready or they're not looking for that type of challenge. For example, in counselling, where there's more of a listening environment, you may find that you're able to talk through stories and the way that you think and the way you feel, and you get a supportive ear. When it comes to life coaching, because it's helping you get a certain result, it's more likely that if there's something that doesn't quite make sense or it's not quite congruent with what you say that you want, that there's going to be more challenges there. So for some people, being challenged can actually be a bit of a difficulty, and that's definitely a drawback when it comes to life coaching. Now we're going to talk about counselling. So counselling often has a different setup, it has a bit of a different vibe, if you like, and the philosophy is quite different as well. When we think about the advantages of counselling, first and foremost, it's a completely safe and non-judgmental environment. So the counsellor will be much more based on listening. So it will often involve you doing a lot more of the talking, and often in sessions it gives you a space where you can just unload, where you can get that kind of cathartic release, where you just get all of those things off your chest. And the counsellor will often listen through to those things, just giving you an ear through which you could talk through your problems. Another advantage of counselling is that when it comes to trauma, some people really want to talk through it. Some people really want to verbalise it and go through the details and actually tell someone else. Whereas life coaching tends to involve less of that information. Of course, there's elements to it depending on your preference, but counselling really goes deeper into the details. In what were you thinking? What were you feeling? How is that affecting you? And for some people, that's a really big advantage because they might not have a space elsewhere where they can actually unload and talk through those different things. This leads on to another important benefit of counselling in that it helps you to actually get clearer in your thinking because you're getting these things off your chest. When you verbalize these thoughts and feelings and you get them out into the open, that actually helps you to see, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm saying. Actually, that doesn't quite make sense, that doesn't quite work. So, one of the benefits of counselling is that it helps you to get all of it out into the open so you can identify those patterns of thinking by yourself. In addition to this, as the counsellor is listening to you and providing that space for you to unload, they can often help you identify themes. So if there are certain themes that are popping up in terms of behaviour patterns that keep reoccurring, actions that you keep doing, or problems that keep surfacing, counselling can be really helpful at helping you identify those patterns of behaviour, which then gives you new insights and new information. Another advantage of counselling is that actually you can form a long-term relationship. Some coaches work on the long term as well, but for many it'll be a condensed period of maybe 6 to 12 months. Whereas when it comes to counselling, some people go to see their counsellor for years and years. Now, this is a place or a space where you can create a really deep and long-term relationship. It comes with obviously the financial element of it, but some people who are looking for that long-term ongoing support, counselling is going to be perfect. The final benefit of counselling is that often counsellors will encourage you to cry. They'll encourage you to shout if you need to. They'll encourage you to think out loud. And it's helping you to actually facilitate your own expression to get those emotions out of you. So sometimes if you're someone who bottles things up or you don't verbalize them, and maybe there's emotions inside that you know should come out because they're bubbling away, a counsellor may actually give you a safe space where you can actually just go into those tears, where you can let all of that emotion out, and again that can give you that sort of cathartic release. Now we're going to look at the disadvantages of counselling. Now, one of the biggest problems some people have with counselling is that because it's encouraging you to go to certain events, it can involve you reliving them. So it can involve you going back to moments of trauma, moments of pain, and then talking through what happened. For some people, this can be really, really difficult, and it actually brings up lots of painful and negative associations, which after the session continue to linger for several days or even till the next session. So, one of the biggest problems people face with counselling is that you can relive those painful events in quite an emotional way, and for some people, that's just really, really distressing. Another downside when it comes to counselling is that it often involves lots of speaking on your part in terms of the participant and lots of listening on the counsellor. So many people may come out of a counselling session and say, oh, I talked a lot and yeah, it feels a bit better to get things off my chest, but I don't really know what I do now. So this element of heavy reliance on talking can actually be quite a downside for a lot of people because they don't feel they have the tools to actually then go and do something differently. So it can form a bit of a pattern where you're just unloading week after week, but actually there's not too much of a shift in terms of how you feel about something or how you're thinking. And that can be quite a powerful downside. Along with this is that because we believe the stories that we tell ourselves, and in counselling you're often encouraged to share your thoughts and stories, sometimes it can ingrain those stories even deeper. So if you have a story where you're feeling a victim or you're feeling hard done by or there's anger and there's blame, when you keep reliving these stories, actually sometimes it can cement them more, which means that they're harder to overcome and they're harder to move on from. So that's definitely something to bear in mind when you think about potentially going to see a counsellor. I talked earlier about a long-term commitment, and that definitely has its pros. The downside, of course, is that over the long term, that can actually be really expensive. So whereas life coaching has a bigger upfront investment, counselling is often a much lower fee, but over time it can turn out to be really, really expensive. So if you're going into that long-term relationship, or if you're looking at counselling, sometimes they may say, oh, we're going to have 24 sessions, or we'll reevaluate at 24 sessions, and then that looks at another package of 24. Although it's weekly payments and often they're lower, the lifetime cost of counselling can actually be significantly higher than life coaching. Another downside of counselling is that because you have this space where you unload, you can actually start to develop a reliance on those counselling sessions to get things off your chest. So it becomes a space where you actually rely on the counsellor to be there and listen to you, and that creates less independence on your part, and that can actually be a downside in terms of your long-term growth. The final disadvantage of counselling that we'll cover today is that often there isn't a clearly defined plan. So often it's a case of coming along to the session and talking through whatever is on your mind at the time. Now, sometimes that can be really helpful, but often it doesn't get down to the deep causes of issues because there's lots of stuff going on above it. So it can take quite a lot of peeling the onion, if you like, to actually get to the crux of the issue. So if you're someone who's looking for a result quite quickly, sometimes counselling isn't really for you because there isn't a plan. It's turn up and see how it happens and then going from there. So in this video, we've really had an equal and balanced look at life coaching and counselling. They both have their advantages and they both have their disadvantages. And this gives you more of a balanced perspective to help you make a more educated and informed choice. If you'd like to speak to me to find out more about how my services can help you, then click on the link below, send me a message, and we'll arrange a time to have a discovery call where we can go into more detail and figure out what it is that you want and how we can help you get there.